Welcome back to the Advanced Photo Manipulation Movie Poster Effects course. My name is Kirk Nelson, and we are now on Lesson 2, where we will be discussing where to get the resource photos for this project. Now, I am providing you with a wide variety of photographs that you can use in this project. I'm giving you all of the photos that I personally used to create the final poster as you've seen. I also encourage you to find a way to try to shoot these photos yourself. That's really the best way of getting a full sense of what's required for a project like this, is to take it as your own work from the start all the way to the finish. But if you don't want to do that, you can feel free to use the ones that I have provided. In looking through the photos that I've provided with the course files, there's 3 specific types that I want you to take notice of. These are the types of photos that you would need to use if you decide to shoot your own. First of all, we need some sort of a humanoid figure. This is an easy way of getting the human-like proportions that we want for the giant robot without having to worry about trying to fully illustrate it or model it in some 3D program. Now, here I'm using a standard drawing mannequin, which works as a pretty decent analog for human proportions. Now, clearly the robot that we are going to be building is a lot thicker and sturdier looking than the mannequin here. And as we go through the course, you'll see exactly how I worked with that. Okay, so the second set of images are mechanical objects. Now, fortunately, I live in an area that it's very easy to get down to the Air and Space Museum or the U.S. Marine Corps Museum, which houses plenty of military and other government equipment that's very large and very industrial looking and very cool in the mechanics aspect. So I was able to go in and grab a lot of these different shots of various mechanical engines and aircraft pieces and tanks and army vehicles and other objects like that. Now, the whole idea behind this is that the individual mechanical parts of these images will be cut out and placed onto our giant robot, so it does look like it's a big machine. Now, while you're taking these shots, there are some things you'll probably want to keep an eye out for. I really like this image because it does provide a large blank piece of metal area, sort of a flat metal texture that does work really well for filling in some of those other areas. This is a very similar one too. I like the rust texture that's in here. That looks very machine-like. Then otherwise, I was certain to grab things like metal plating with bolts and nuts in it. I really like the rounded areas around the treads of this tank. Other pieces of metal plates with rust on it that can be used to add a really good texture to our giant robot. And then just other mechanical looking elements too. Now, something like this big wheel here, I envisioned that as working really well for maybe a shoulder joint or something in the knee. Just the general heaviness of the artillery type of metal is the exact type of character that I want to portray in this giant robot. The third series of images are the setting shots. I've included several of these, most of which I didn't really use, but they're in here in case you feel like you would like to use them for your projects. So I'm just keeping them in here. I did find that to get the vantage point like I wanted to, what I needed to do was to actually get on top of a parking garage that overlooked a fairly dense city area, but still has enough room between buildings that a big fighting robot would fit in there. Through this elevated viewpoint, I took notice of where the perspective lines appear to go and what the lighting is like, because that determines how I set up the shots for the mannequin shoot. The point here is that I wanted the lighting to be from the upper left, like it was in the street shot. And I also wanted to make sure the vantage point was about at the knee level. So it's a very slight upward angle looking up at this figure here, because that's one of the critical aspects for relating the size of the figure is the viewpoint of the camera. And by placing the vantage point down here about knee level, it's not really the worm's eye view where it's at foot level looking straight up it, but it's removed out with a little bit of distance and it's about the level of the knee. and that provides a decent perspective to build this giant character in a believable fashion. I also was careful to mind the type of lighting that we have now. I certainly wanted an outdoor lighting here, which is why this image is not in the studio. I wanted the daytime sunshine to be lit on it. Now, I purposely picked an overcast day to do this too, so that I wouldn't get harsh shadows, but I would still get that bright overhead light. As we look at the street setting that we're using, it's a very similar type of lighting conditions there, because you can see that the lighting is coming from the left because this side of the building is lit up more so than the front face of it. So it's also coming from slightly behind the building too. But if you look closely at where the shadows are falling, according to things like the trees, they're falling almost straight down and slightly to the right. In fact, there's hardly any perceivable shadow from these vertical pillars within the parking lots. And so that matches well with the lighting conditions we have on the base mannequin model. Paying this much attention to the lighting during the shooting process pays off later on when you don't have to try to force artificial lighting elements into the scene. Okay, well that wraps up lesson 2 on the resource photos. Be sure to check back for lesson 3. That's where we will really get things rolling and delve into the basic setup of the primary elements of this project.